Shunya character is woven out of the many avadutas that I have met. There are a certain category of spiritual teachers called avadutas. They follow no social norms. They have found something and it has blasted their minds out. And they're like, the minds have gone to pieces, not in a bad way, good way. And there is no conditioning there. It is totally so they behave as they want in their own way, but it will never be to harm somebody. Such people I have met many. They don't have a name, they don't have ashramas, they don't have banners, they have nothing. Shunya is actually manufactured out of many such people put together. So that's what Shunya is all about. And he comes from nowhere. So somebody asks him, what's your name? My name is Shunya. So where have you come from? He said, does Shunya come from anywhere? I mean, it is zero.
Hello and welcome to Outlook Bibliophile. This week, it's not a full-time author, writer that we have in the show, but he's a spiritual guru, and he's come up with, of course, he's written books. His new book is just out. Meet Sri M. Thank you very much for joining Bibliophile. His book, The Himalayan Master, a Yogi's Autobiography, this came in 2016 or 2016. 3 years ago now?
I think a little more than that.
Okay, 2 years ago. And it went on to become an instant bestseller. And now he's come up with another book called Shunya, which, as he calls, it's a novel. So we'll come to that a little later. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about, the Yogi's Autobiography first. Reading the book, it seems that, you're actually, of course, it's your life story. And throughout the book, it's you come across as a seeker, rather than a preacher, which is what I found it quite interesting. So, are you still a seeker?
Well, I think I have found what I sought, but I don't like the preacher kind of communication, because it's like you know everything and you're standing on the rooftop and you're preaching to her. Even though I think I have found what I was looking for, I think the best way to put it across to people is through dialogue, through talking to them, asking them questions, having a dialogue. It's like, actually I believe, also because of my experience, that every human being has some kind of a spark in them. Might not have become a big fire, but the spark is there. It looks like, you're browbeating people by just preaching. I would rather that people talk to me and naturally discover what I have experienced, which is why it appears like that. Plus the fact that for me, the hero in the autobiography is Maheshwarnath Babaji, my guru, not me.
Right.
So, during my growing years, of course, I was a seeker. So that's why it appears like that, and it is all about that.
Also, the other thing is, apart from the finding the guru, it is really speaking sort of a travelogue. It is a journey of a young boy who's 19, who just starts walking from Kerala and reaches the Himalayas.
Actually, I have to correct you there. I didn't walk from Kerala. I went to Rishikesh and started walking.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So yes, it was a travelogue for me also, because new places, new things, new experiences. Although the Himalayas have always fascinated me, I never had any understanding of what it actually is when you go there.
Yes.
This was for me a great experience.
So how did a 19-year-old boy in Trivandrum, in Trivandrum start dreaming of the snows?
When I was very small also, whenever I looked up at the sky and saw the clouds, I thought there were some snow-clad mountains. From childhood, it's like 4 years, 5 years, I used to sit and stare and say, hey, this is how the mountains are. For some time, then I went to school, I saw some pictures of the Himalayas, and I said, I think this is what I was thinking about, contemplating on. So it was always there in me. So then when I reached there, it was all excitement because, I'll give you keep walking. When you go to Kedar, for instance, you can either go on a mule or walk, but some distance you walk. As you keep walking, for a long time you won't see any of the ice-clad mountains. Long time. Suddenly, at some point from Rambara, you turn the corner and there it stands in all its majesty. Even people who don't believe in God and all the spiritual things, they will be taken aback at this sight. I've seen many people who just come like tourists.
It's an overwhelming.
It's an overwhelming experience, and especially for me who was thinking of the Himalayas all the time. And then later on I read about the Himalayas also, of course. But even after reading of other people traveling, you don't know what it is unless you see it. It's something extraordinary.
In fact, this seems to be another trait of spiritual gurus from Adi Shankaracharya to they've all traveled. It's so what is the thing about
traveling? One, gaining experience. Two, being in unfamiliar territory. Actually, nobody asked me this. You're asking me now. I like this. Unfamiliar territory. Every day you are in a new place, and that shows how the world is and how your mind should adjust to everything that it comes and not get stuck in one design, one form. When you walk, you see new places. Every day is new, and it is so uncertain. You don't know what is going to happen. And there are some people who don't like uncertainty. For somebody who likes to uncertainty, then it's a wonderful experience. You don't know where you're going. Of course, I was thinking I might find a yogi teacher or somebody. It was there in the back of my mind. Long time I did not find anybody. So it was an adventure for me. In fact, there are some things which I have not even done. Once I ended up sleeping in a cave where there was a bear. I didn't know it was a bear's cave, on the way from Gangotri to Gomukh. There are many caves there. I thought it's some yogis dwelling. It was stinking, but I didn't realize until the fellow came at night. Luckily, I don't know how I escaped. I just lay down like this quietly. I've heard people say that you must pretend to be dead, so I held my breath. It came near and made sounds. I thought this is over, and when I opened my eyes, I'll be either in hell or heaven. I don't know. It depends on my karma. When I opened my eyes, the fellow went off. It was a full moon night. Of course, you can't sleep after that. So I spent quite a sleepless night. Next day morning, when I came out, the villagers, goat herds who were going, they started worshipping me. They said, "How did you sleep inside in that bear's cave?" It's a bhalu's cave. Yeah. How did you must be some divine being, some yogi or something.
So it does work, pretending to be dead in front of a bear.
It worked for me. Okay. I don't know if it worked. Not a good thing to experiment.
That's true. I wanted to ask you, why is it important to find a guru?
Spiritual field is largely unexplored territory. You can go without a guru. You might be able to go. Extraordinary persons might be able to go. But there are many stumbling blocks and there are many pits into which you can fall. If you have a teacher, then you are saved from it. And the search is also, the length of the search is reduced. Provided is the right teacher, that's there. You can go to the wrong teacher and go on and the illusion that, this is right, and end up in a greater pit. Possible. But generally, in the spiritual journey, you will find most people had a teacher. Extraordinary people like Ramana Maharshi did not have a teacher, but that is not normal. It's not the normal, no. If somebody decides, Ramana Maharshi didn't have to, I want to be free, I also don't want to, I'll find out who I am. I don't know how long this process will take. You might be led away on the side somewhere also.
And now, of course, a lot of people consider you the teacher. So, and I'm sure it comes with also that kind of responsibility, isn't it? I mean, because you are able to...
Big responsibility. One of the greatest responsibilities that I learned from Maheshwarnath Babaji, my teacher, was the teacher is not as important as what is being taught. So, apart from the responsibility of giving them the right direction, because there are different kinds of people coming. I personally believe that there are many ways to go there, and luckily, Big Babaji is great. I have gone through many of the paths, and I kind of have some rough idea of what is good for somebody, or if somebody thinks this is good for me, how to guide them. This I think I can in some way. So, but that is one responsibility. Although Krishnamurti says truth is a pathless land, but I think there are many paths to the truth. The other is the responsibility of seeing that they don't get inordinately attached to the being, to the person, and are very serious about what they're doing, the teachings.
Yeah.
This is a very it's like walking on the edge of a razor, as the Upanishads say.
Sure.
Shurasya dhara. You know, it's very easy to turn into worship.
Yes.
I avoid that deliberately.
And you've said that what you are looking for is it's not numbers. I mean, it's not mass following, but it's quality of people who. You mentioned that in the book too.
But unfortunately or fortunately, nowadays there are too many people coming to me also. But I don't know what to do about it. But I think if they're not serious, they'll drop off after a while. I don't make a mistake about it.
Also, in a country where godmen are, I'm sure you're expecting this question, but godmen have, unfortunately have got this, they're power hungry or swindlers or molesters. I mean, in that kind of, how do you reconcile to this?
I don't do such things.
No.
And so I am out of it, and I see that there are lots of people who do that. What can you do? So I try to say what I know and how things. There's no point in going and telling them. It's not going to work. In fact, I am only hoping that if they find sometimes they feel it's better not to have a teacher at all than to have such kind of people as your guides. You end up nowhere.
Yeah, because this is, as you were just saying, this is the kind of misuse of that responsibility, isn't it? I mean, there is somebody following you blindly and you're using them.
When you become if others look at you as a spiritual teacher, it is fraught with great danger because it can be exploited.
Right.
Easily exploited. People are awed, overawed, and then they do what you want to do.
Right.
Yeah, so it is tricky. We should try our best to.
You were born a Muslim, and of course you are sort of well versed in so many scriptures or so many religious texts and Hindu. Do you, the current political scenario that is there in the country, does it worry you that this syncretic culture that India has been sort of so proud of? Is it? Do you think there is some kind of a danger to that?
As long as people don't forget their roots, even if it is steeped in tradition, as far as India is concerned, the roots of Indian spiritual life, even you cannot disprove it, is that it sees everything as a multi-colored phenomenon, this world. 2000 years ago, the Rig Veda said, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanti. There is only one truth. The wise may call it by different names. So if one says that I am steeped in my culture, they cannot overtly do too many things which will make it break. Not possible. Somewhere, even if they're consciously trying it for political purpose or something, they will come to some point where they'll have to stop and say, no, this cannot be. It cannot work.
Because it's such a, when all religions in the book you talk about, it's peace, it's giving, it's, empathy, but unfortunately, there's so much hatred and violence and all over the world. I
have this to say, that it's easier that this can happen in religions which have one book and one teacher. It's easier. When you have multiple teachers, like the Vedas are the product of knowledge of hundreds of rishis, you can't say one person, you cannot ascribe it. In this kind of thing, it is very difficult to bring in that thing, even though there might be attempts to bring in this kind of separation. But I think in the long run it is not going to work, because it's the duty of spiritual teachers to teach even those who are in power, look, this is our culture, we cannot do this. This is what I attempt to do. I am in friendly terms with everybody. I try to talk to them, make them understand, look, your culture is a great culture, our culture is a great culture, but then it is very syncretic. The problem is, sometimes they understand, sometimes they don't. But if I talk this way to a person from another religion, it is a little bit difficult to convince them that all paths lead to the same goal. Little difficult to convince. So there is this exclusiveness.
Yes.
That also I am trying to work out, saying if you go back to your roots, there is no such exclusiveness. You have created it for a purpose.
And we would like to talk a little bit about his new book, which is called Shunya. And as I said, it's called a novel. So this is a novel is usually a work of fiction, but this is this a work of fiction then? Because there's a lot of you in this, I'm sure.
I have to tell you something interesting. When I wrote the autobiography, several people asked me whether is there at least some parts which are fiction. They said, but in fact, one of my close friends, much older than me, who knows me well, said that if somebody else had written this book, I would not have even read it. Because he knows me from childhood. He said, I don't think you say any untruthful things. So I am reading it and it's interesting. But there was this feeling. Now when I wrote Shunya, which is given as a novel and a non-fiction book, people ask me, is that real? It's very strange. They ask, I think there is some you in the Shunya. I said, look, when you write a book, there is bound to be part of you there somewhere.
They say any book.
Yeah, but why they're saying this is because there are many spiritual things also involved in this.
Very briefly, this is, so there is this character called Shunya who suddenly appears in a toddy shop in a Kerala village, to the toddy seller's house, and he, starts to become, some consider him a ghost, some call him a madman, but then he slowly starts to gain popularity. Just to give a brief idea of what the book is about. So so this Shunya character is very interesting.
Shunya character is woven out of the many avadutas that I have met. There are a certain category of spiritual teachers called avadutas. They follow no social norms. They have found something and it has blasted their minds out. And they're like, the minds have gone to pieces, not in a bad way, good way. And there is no conditioning there, it is totally so they behave as they want in their own way, but it will never be to harm somebody. Such people I have met many. They don't have a name, they don't have ashramas, they don't have banners, they have nothing. Shunya is actually manufactured out of many such people put together. So that's what Shunya is all about. And he comes from nowhere. So somebody asks him, what's your name? My name is Shunya. So where have you come from? He said, does Shunya come from anywhere? It is zero.
Yeah.
And in 3 years after all the adventures, it just disappears.
Some people have also kind of compared you, called you the modern day Kabir Das, a sort of this, who's religionless, who's sort of just a wandering kind of poet and spreading the, So, do you identify with Kabir?
I do. I appreciate Kabir very much, but I'm not exactly like that. Because, Kabir never taught the Upanishads and Vedanta and all. Even though in his teachings it is reflected, I go deep into that and I take up sloka by sloka, explain, and this Kabir didn't do. But if you ask me, is there a common point? I think yes. Because Kabir was also living in a millennium where there was so much orthodoxy. His guru was Ramananda, who was from an orthodox one. He was born a Muslim weaver in Banaras. He learned and he became a wonderful soul. In those days, what Kabir said was dangerous to say, but he didn't care.
Yes. That's true.
Yeah, there is some such connection is there.
In fact, so much of what Kabir said at that time, I don't know if it can be said freely today.
Even today, see, so that's the thing. That's why I value him. I think Kabir was a wonderful person. When he said Ram, he meant the Supreme Being.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much, Sri M. Thank you so much. It was a delight to speak to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.